All right. We're on to the main event, I guess. It's the review and the approval or rejection of the revised recovery plan. Mayor, since you spoke to the hard decisions that had to be made and some of the cuts, would you like to go over some of this with us?
In short, it is
sure.
more of what we've been doing. We implemented a number of things to save money. We implemented part-time firefighters in particular. We implemented part-time police as police department. We are now faced with eliminating, quite frankly, some of the things that were designed to save some money. We save, in many cases, save some money, but we have to cut so drastically that we're going to get rid of a number of individuals. So there will be significant cuts in fire through the elimination of part-time employees. There are even more significant cuts, in my estimation, in the police department. We will be eliminating nearly all of our part-time police officers, leaving us with very few police. Those police, for the most part, will be part-timers. There is a bit of relief from a grant that we received over the next few years, just short of $500,000 to convert. As I believe that we're getting rid of approximately 18 part-time police officers. But actually save 3 of those who are being converted to full-timers as a result of the grant. So the cops grant. The cops grant. Okay. So those are the major eliminations in the plan. We do look in the future to do things that will cut costs, namely trash disposal. We hope that over the next year we will negotiate an agreement with the neighboring city that will save us on some of our trash disposal. We are looking for revenue enhancements. Those things, of course, will be explored, but regionalism costs money. Service sharing costs money. One thing that idealistic elected officials realize when you get into the thick of it, regionalism sounds good, but they're really selling services. They're not sharing services so much. And if we were in a position to buy, we might be able to save money in the long run, but we're not in a position to buy services. So the cuts mainly in police and fire, simply because beyond police and fire, the other parts of the operation are so small. 1 man or woman in a shop, 2 men or women in a shop, there's just no room to cut out something that we need when there's only 1 or 1.5 employees there. An example would be the service department. In times like these, we would cut everywhere to some extent. But in a service department that way back when had 45 employees in it, today has 7. The city service department cleans streets, fixes traffic signals, fixes street lights, used to pick up leaves until now. We've had some service cuts, but again, that's just an overview of the plan. Some of mostly cost cutting, some exploration of new revenue, and some exploration of partnerships.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
And the mayor did not elaborate, and I won't elaborate on it. I'll just come out and say that there are some individuals other than the police that have been given raises and are making salaries beyond the nature of cutting. So what the council will be looking at is the personnel and appointments committee is to evaluate and see what is going on in departments where people are making 65 to 70,000 or more than that when they're talking about being a one-man or one-woman shop. The grant that was mentioned here will provide salary and benefits for 3 policemen, and that's great. And we've had policemen to retire, so that's money, but you have to pay the pension part of it. So I'm sure that you don't have to closely at, this council is going to look very closely at those individuals that are being cut and keep an eye on how it's being done on a fair and equitable basis. Thank you.
Okay. Mary Ann, you had said that you had a question earlier about the plan. Did you want to answer that now?
Yes, I do, if you don't mind. And I would like to direct my question to the mayor, please. Under the expenditure reductions, the action items,
Okay.
number 15,
Page 4.
on page 4, is the intent to inactivate those deficit funds? In other words, they won't be used. Is that what you mean by that?
Yes, it's something that we started perhaps a year ago, and something that we're doing operationally now. That is dormant funds that have some fund balance. We're transferring the positive fund balance to clear up some of the deficit funds.
Okay, well then that leads me to another question. That would be on the previous page, which would be page 3. That would be number 8, transferring the balances from unused funds. So is that the same thing?
Let me take a look. And really what we're trying to do is bring those deficits and reflect them inside the general fund. So 1, the transfer of positive fund balances, eliminating those, and then moving them into the general fund so they're all reported and seen in the same general fund.
Okay, and then the deficit funds become inactive.
Right.
So you don't spend out of them
Right.
anymore. But does that mean that the expenditure that would have occurred in that fund is now going to occur in the general fund?
If there's an expenditure, but part of the reason for eliminating those funds in the first place is because they're really not used.
Okay. Then I'm sorry, but I have a couple other questions.
So you don't have to apologize.
The next question I have is under other actions, the surplus revenues.
Okay.
On page 4. We make reference to the surplus revenues or the revenue that we'll receive from the sale of tower leases and cell tower leases or the sale of property. Do we have an idea of how much money we collected in those areas, like over the last 3 years, and what we would guess we might collect going forward?
We know what we've collected over the past few years. A number of those are one-shot, one-time sources. And we've, just to characterize a few of them, sale of a cell tower for $300,000 or $400,000. Sale of a piece of land for $125,000. There is not much. There's little, if any, revenue programmed in the forecast from these types of sales. So anything that we do receive from those types of sales going forward will essentially be revenue that we did not project. And that's a good thing.
Because we
That's a
can't.
good thing. Right.
Okay.
But it's also it's a conservative estimate, basically.
Okay, and the last question I have is under shared services. That would be page 5. It would be item 5. Is there an update on that item, on operating the Helen S. Brown Senior Center?
Yes, it's leased now to a church. So it has gone from being a cost center to a revenue center.
Wonderful.
Yes.
What type of revenue?
Little. Little. The church pays rent, essentially, at the Helen S. Brown Center.
And it won't be a vacant piece of property, where if the church have done its due diligence and cleaning up and making repairs where repairs is necessary. And when the pastor came before the council and gave us the project and what it would entail and how it was going to be used. And it going to also put senior projects together to come out of there and do things. It's a good project, even though the revenue is not that much. It's better under having them do fix up, clean up, and use. And in the wintertime, there will be heat in the building, so pipes won't be busting all over the place. So, and the council felt that this was a good thing for East Cleveland, even though the other entity was going on over to the church across the street. And that's where who is housing our other seniors from LS Brown.
And
New life that they,
financially, beyond just the building, the facility itself, Ms. Thompson's right, there's capital improvements that are being made by this church. So in addition to paying a small amount in rent, capital improvements are being made. Secondly, beyond the facility itself, there were expenses for a number of years for service out of the L&S Brown Center. The building wasn't the expensive thing, it was the services that were being provided. In the past few months, we've negotiated with outside service providers where we essentially took that expense off of the city to provide senior services and had it be filled by the private nonprofit sector along with Cuyahoga County. So in the past few years, we've taken parks and recreation nearly off almost all of our books through the Boys and Girls Club and allowing them to use and renovate the Civic Center, and having the nonprofit East Cleveland Parks Association take great care of our parks through funds that they raise. And similarly now, we have done the same thing with the Helen S. Brown Center. We retain ownership of the building. We've got programming in the building that's a church, but across the street, our seniors receive services that are comparable, not the same, but comparable, that are funded by outside agencies. So while it may seem slow, while we may still have a list of payables that is too long, longer than we want it to be, we have made some strides toward taking costs off of the city while still providing services to the elderly and to children, just like we planned.
I think it's a great thing that we're still reaching out to help our seniors. They won't feel left out. They're in two different places, and this individual cathedral is asking for more participation.
I have two questions.
Sure.
Maybe appropriate to the mayor or to the financial supervisor. In the general fund projection sheets, which start at approximately page 7 through 9, on page 9, at the recovery plan items, we see that the citywide reduction in staff for 2016 will be approximately $785,000. How many employees is that, or FTEs does that equate to?
A lot. Too many. And the bulk of them are police and fire. Again, I gave you a couple numbers, about 15 on the police side, and fewer, but a significant number on the fire side.
And for this year, we look at the forecast as 0. Is there any need to accelerate any of that to make this year in a positive balance?
The cuts that are reflected in 16 for the most part, some of the cuts have already happened in 15, but they're not reflected under the forecasted 15. We stuck with the appropriations.
Okay.
But a lot of the cuts reflected in 16 are employees who have left in 15 that are currently paying their severance. There are police and fire individuals who so far have not been replaced, and that is what makes up the majority of the cuts in 16. But between severance payments and everything else, we did not reflect anything in 15.
And if you don't mind, just a little bit of detail around that, or maybe I'm saying the same thing just in a different way. When an employee leaves us today, particularly those who have been here for 15 years or so, which is literally happening, we pay them $40,000 when they walk out. because our union contracts are very, very generous. They allow for the payment of sick time that's accumulated, as well as vacation and comp time and holiday time. Literally, in the past 2 months, each month, we've cut a check for $40,000. Now, of course, that's an FTE that's not here. But this year, because we paid them $40,000, if we look at just the year-to-date expenditures and the departmental expenditures, it looks like we're spending more on that employee this year than we would ever spend on them in any other year. Because, but again, it's a one-shot time, and the savings will be realized next year.
And for 2017 and 18, when you look at the reduction in staff, are those, I presume I know for the 2018 for the, is that cumulative or is that additional cuts each year?
Additional cuts each year.
So it'd be safe to say that it's going to be tough when we get to 2018.
Deficit. Deficit.
It's almost $3 million in cuts. You probably know it.
2016 and 2016 and 2017 are livable. 2018 is devastating.
But that's the only way that you can get to a place where in the next 3 to 5 years we are at a positive balance.
Yes.
Let me ask one other question because I see it here on page 4, but I don't see it reflected in the financials. We still have on here on page 4, number 6, the issue of the note, but in your projection there is no issue of that note. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So
we
go ahead. You go, sir.
we don't want to anticipate something that might not materialize on the revenue side. We're perfectly willing to anticipate something on the cost side, but on the revenue side, we don't want to anticipate anything that might not materialize.
Correct.
I got to check with the expert.
Sorry.
My right hand, am I right?
I guess.
Well, I just asked that because looking at where this is going for the 3-year out position, for me, I wouldn't be comfortable with the government note being issued and recognizing that in 3 years you're going to be in such a shambles. It's going to be tough. We need to figure out some way, particularly with you and covering the city for safety service, to find some space where, be it the county come back in and offer some services, but recognizing that those cuts are out of safety services is going to be very difficult.
We certainly look to the RTA police to beef up. We can expand the parameter of the Windermere quite a ways.
Well, we did some work with you guys, and we appreciate it when we did some shared services, and we do have sort of an expanded service between here and Superior that, thanks to your law director, allows us a little bit more latitude where our helpline works in our bus stations.
And we do have a budget for patches for your RTA police if you want to slap in some police patches.
The Velcro, they just take it off.
Right, that's good. That's good.
I do want to point out that this forecast does not reflect the 2.8 million in payables being paid.
Right.
So those costs would be in addition to the costs reflected in this plan. The state auditor had us develop a plan in which it included the 2.8 million. And the only way for the plan to be in the black in year 5 was again with significant reduction in staff. And I have a copy of it if anyone would like to see the plan.
I mean, if you, even harkening back to the analysis that was presented a meeting or 2 ago, I don't even remember anymore. Out of the 8 scenarios that government services ran, only 3 of them ended up with any positive balances, if I
Correct.
remember correctly, and all of them had substantial reductions citywide.
And even with borrowing the local government, you'll remember in the one scenario, the city we borrowed to only pay the accounts payable. I think if memory serves correctly, that accounted for 20 positions being eliminated to be able for the city to pay that back. So again, that would be in addition to whatever is reflected on here.
And bear in mind that from when we first started these meetings until today, payroll has decreased considerably. And you know what the results of that have been so far. I mean, people have stepped up to the plate when needed, and there's no doubt about it. But after a while, there's going to be fewer and fewer people to step up to that plate.
And Madam Chair, if I could, just to put a person number around that, I think in 2010, when I came in as mayor, we had about 250 employees, give or take, 240, 250. Today, we're down to around 120. So we've literally cut our staff almost in half.
And just actually one more question on the reduction. In 2016, the balance of those positions are scheduled to phase in or scheduled to be a beginning of the fiscal year cut of those positions?
Do it as soon as we can. And again, with each round of cuts, in some way, shape, or form, there's an initial lump payment that will involve the expenditures. It's just the nature of the beast.
So actually, to attain those dollars, you're talking to people. I mean, that's what cities do. They provide services and people provide those services. And to be able to realize those type of savings, you're actually going to have to cut more because of those payments.
We cut one person, we cut one employee to save the salary of that employee that we cut, and we cut another employee to pay out the severance package for the one that we cut. Yeah, that's essentially what we have to do.
Mary Ann.
Mayor, I have a question about contract negotiations. Are those coming up anytime soon, or they are?
Yes, and they'll be contentious, as they've always been. There is, and you know, I love our unions. I love our services, our service department. In some cases, rich contract language aside, our employees are among the lowest paid in the state of Ohio, probably the Midwest. So there's already nothing to give, or very little to give in the area of wages. In the area of benefits, there are some things. But we've had to live so long with benefit-rich contracts, and it's reflected in our payables for the health care, things like that, and the payouts for the severance packages. We will try to negotiate some of those things out, understanding, though, that wages are already rock bottom in some cases. So it's going to be an uphill climb. I can just say it in public because it's been a difficult thing to deal with in East Cleveland. In our fire contract, there is the holy grail of the minimum manning clause, which is why, in some cases, we have not been able to contemplate more layoffs or smaller staff in our fire and EMS area. So yes, we have contract negotiations coming up. That is an opportunity to do some things, but then they will take it to arbitrators. In the state of Ohio, cities don't fare well in many cases when the arbitrator is in play. I hope that answers your question. We've got some challenges.
I thought minimum manning, I thought you told us that was no longer.
It had been reduced. Minimum manning had been reduced. But with the in the beginning of the explanation of the plan, I talked about some of the things that we had done to save money. We will now not be able to do them because of the cuts. The very first item that mirrors that is the elimination of part-time firefighters. In the minimum manning scenario, minimum manning was 12 full-time firefighters. We brought it down to 10 firefighters overall. 8 of them had to be union full-time. 2 of them could be part-time. If 2 part-timers were not available to work that shift, we had to add 2 full-timers to it, so it would be 10 full-timers. Without the part-time firefighters, due to budget cuts, we will now have a 10-person minimum manning full-time full union benefits for all 10 of them, which is more expensive than these.
And
why even cut the
It's-
part-time?
That's all we have to do.
But I mean, you've got to bring on to full-time.
Right. I understand. It's a very difficult thing to do. But, you know, hopefully, if there's a ray of hope at all, we will perhaps get an arbitrator who understands the plight of cities, because it used to be that East Cleveland was the only city in this plight, so it didn't ring true with an arbitrator who we were facing. But now as more and more cities face these types of circumstances, perhaps arbitrators will have heard them a bit more and be more responsive.
Yes.
The council, the two unions came to us
Which
with
union?
the police union and the chief and the fire came to us and asked the council, could they have these part-time workers, employees. These part-time workers are on call because they work for another city, okay? So they work as needed. And even though we're talking about the money that these individuals make, say for instance, full-timers make, they're still paying out of their salary. You're taking their health care, you're taking the pension, all of this is coming out of their salary. Not only that, you got, once you delete some of the part-timers, then you have the option of having, so what I'm told, you have the option of making full-timers from some of those part-timers. So I think that we can make do with what we have when you're talking about alleviating some of the part-timers, because they work as needed. And some of your people have left, so you have that vacancy that you can count on. Like I said, the council will be looking very, very closely at the layoffs and the cuts and all of that is going to take place. And because sometimes you need to look and see if there's other places that you can cut. That's what I'm still saying, where the salaries are far beyond what they should be. And then the personnel and appointment committee, that's what will be taking place.
What departments, you've said that a few times, what departments have higher than normal income levels? I mean, I negotiated many of these contracts, so I know people are paid at a very low level.
Okay, you have
Where,
where
well, I agree, that's why I need to know where
Okay.
are people
you
making.
got a chief of staff, but you don't really need a chief of staff. We could, in the mayor's administration, we got a lady that's supposed to be, went to human resources, she was supposed to be getting a 15% increase, but she got 24,000 increase. And there's others that we could look at. So I'm just saying, I sat there and I talked to Jack Johnson, and when that happened, he seemed a little off center like I was when it was supposed to be coming down. Look at it, take a look at it, and deal with her salary. But in the meantime, we can move on.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I really don't want to make this any type of back and forth argument.
It's not.
One thing that we have to recognize in East Cleveland is that this is a citywide problem here.
Okay.
And continued focus on the salary or role in the organization of two individuals, quite frankly, two individuals, is part of and symptomatic of what has put East Cleveland in this dilemma over the last several years. We focus too much on personalities, we focus too much on individuals, we focus too much on penalizing and being punitive, when in reality, this is an overall plan with overall consequences, and it's an overall effort. The decrease in salary or elimination of two individuals whose names keep coming up will do almost nothing to put a dent in what the real problem is. And those two individuals who keep being mentioned, they are two of the smartest, hardest working people. One of them had a significant role in this plan, and one of them works to save this, both of them work to save this money, this city money, every single day. The revenue enhancements that we talked about, the $300,000 from the cell tower, $400,000 from the cell tower, the $125,000 from the sale of property. One of the individuals whose name always comes up is responsible for that $500,000 that came into the city. The other individual is responsible for getting these health care claims paid and getting them all organized and going through them. You know, just to continue to harp on two individuals is very, very short-sighted when it comes to the magnitude.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and with all due respect, we're not talking about two individuals, we're talking about salary, we're talking about money. Money that we have to pay out. I don't care if it's 1.5 person, I'm not talking about personality, I'm not talking about who's the greatest thing in since sugar. I'm talking about monies that is in a budget, and the budget is supposed to be looked at as an overall thing. I let you talk, and please do not.
We all know where this goes.
So
It just
what
makes
I'm
no
saying
sense.
to you,
It makes no sense.
and I'm saying to anybody and a resident that's out there, you ask where the money goes, I don't care if it's a penny. When you're putting together a budget, if a penny is off, you got to find out where that penny come from and where it goes. So according, and I'm saying to you, no one employee brought money into the city without authorization and the passing from the legislative body. If we didn't pass it, it wouldn't be here. You're talking about the Salvation Army, we passed that. The Boys and Girls Club, we passed that. You're talking about the Helen S. Brown, we passed that. So if you did not use the legislative authority and the legislative body to pass this, you would not have revenue. And if we didn't go through it, I don't care what the mayor said, this is not personal, I don't even see a face on a dollar. But that one on the 10, and one on the 50, and one on the 100, if they were fake. And Madam Chair, I'm sorry, but we can go on because this is not doing us any good. But I had to do this.
There's only one person at this table who doesn't understand about those two people in the savings.
No, I think a lot of them
Maria, you have a question. Okay, what's your question? Okay,
I'm looking at the accounts payable.
okay.
And,
Which page?
well, actually all of them, Helen, but I'm looking specifically at Gomezi, Switzer, Murphy, Polito, and Huff. Well, they appear as early as 2013.
This guy.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 invoices, I guess, for them. And I know that you've been trying to negotiate and have them take less money. I was just wondering, someone like this firm, if you offered them, I don't know what this adds up to, I didn't add it up, but if you added it up and it came to $75,000, if you offered them 45, do you think they'd take it? Because I know you've been working at doing that, but maybe we could do it again and see if we can get people to settle this.
Part of it, I'll answer this way. Like I said, we took the city staff from 240 people to 120. 2/3 of those are police and firefighters. They are not going to negotiate that. Those who are left, we've got individuals in the service department who are not the ones to negotiate that. I'm just trying to help whittle down the number of employees who are available. We do not have a team of accountants, we don't have a team of lawyers to do this. On an individual basis, as we can, we contact these vendors and ask them, can they do this, that, and the other. The pace will be incredibly slow, simply because we don't. I'll give you an example. Mike Smedley is one of the people who contacts these vendors and says, look, we know we owe you such and such amount of money, but we need you to take less than that. We know that we have these claims, these bills that you've submitted, but some of them are things that we didn't receive. Mike Smedley is the chief of staff, and he is responsible for that. Mike Smedley, quite frankly, also oversees the service department. We have so few individuals at that level who can, one, operate the city as it is today and look out for cost overruns and try and bring in revenue, and then on top of that, try and negotiate those things. Police officers can't do it. Firefighters can't do it. Service workers can't do it. Court employees can't do it. The mayor can do some of it. The chief of staff can do some of it. The law director can do some of it, and the finance director can do some of it. But we also run the city on a daily basis, so I don't mean to belabor the explanation. I was just trying to give you a flavor of how few individuals, number one, are available, number two, are capable. And we're talking about getting rid of some of the few individuals who are capable.
Oh,
You know what?
thanks.
The law director just negotiated down from $270,000 that somebody was suing us for, down to $170,000. And when I talked to Jerry Johnson the other day, he said he makes the calls to ask the individuals if they would take less. This person, the lawyer, came to the council and stated that our law director, Ms. Hemming, negotiated with them. And he said, basically, it was better for them to negotiate down and get something out of this than keep belaboring it in court. And this was the explanation that was going to be given some time ago, that we were, and Mr. Johnson, who is the finance director, had the list of these individuals, and we were supposed to back when, and you remember, Sharon, we're supposed to call these individuals and say, yes, it was a while ago, and talk to them and ask them what would they settle for. He said that has not been done, okay? From anybody, okay? So I'm saying there is you got two people up there. You got a law director and assistant law director. And she was doing the negotiating for coming down, bringing things, the numbers down. And I was really satisfied with her bringing $270,000 down to $170,000, and it was on a payment plan.
Oh, okay.
So you could, it's not where you have to do it all, and it was $25,000 as opposed to one whole. So there is, if you make the effort, and I'm not talking about two individuals, I'm talking about, I mean, it sounds all sweet up here when the mayor does it because he can spend it real good. But to me, if you make this effort to get it done, like the law director did, it can be done. But I'm not going to keep going on this. We got a lot to contend with, and specifically, we're talking about the recovery plan.
Right. Dr. King?
Yeah, this question is for the mayor. Can you explain, Mayor, several years ago, it might have been maybe like 6 years ago now, when you had the county sheriffs assisting in the city, can you explain why that stopped, and if there is a penchant to allow them, as you make these cuts, to try to find some assistance there? And I'm thinking of you can get the savings in salary, but still have some coverage for the safety of both the residents and those of us who work here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm just thinking, how much should I share?
Or if
And
there are
to that.
conversations.
No, there's an answer to it. I just have to go with what length of answer you want and how bad I'll talk about somebody else.
Well, let's not do that.
I'm kidding. It's a decision that was made at the sheriff's office level. It was a decision that was made when Gerald McFall was sheriff. Love him or hate him, Gerald McFall helped out East Cleveland. When he was sheriff, he deployed deputies to help patrol the city of East Cleveland. That was a very, very good thing for our city. As we all know, Sheriff McFall, several years ago, ceased being the sheriff. Literally, there was a new sheriff in town. And that new sheriff pulled the deployment out of East Cleveland and put it in downtown Cleveland. That's what he did. So that's why it ceased.
Okay.
And at that point, due to some additional revenues from traffic cameras and things like that, we were able to increase the police force in the city of East Cleveland. So we had our own police force again. But in times like these, where we talk about these sorts of drastic cuts, we are again approaching Cuyahoga County to try and get that same sort of assistance that was provided by Sheriff McFall. I hope that we'll be successful with that. Last time, it was solely dependent upon Sheriff McFall and his successor. This time, because of the organizational structure at Cuyahoga County, the sheriff is no longer elected. The sheriff is appointed by the county executive. So we have begun to speak with Cuyahoga County about that. They know that it's a need that may arise in our city, and we hope that they will be willing to deploy some of their deputies here. I hope that was detailed enough for you, short enough for you, and not bloody enough for you.